Hello and a very warm welcome to today's Sydney Direct. I'm Natalie MacDonald. Joining me on today's show, I have Brun of OptionsXpress. We're talking that big haul of data that we saw out of the Australian economy and a look at what it is doing to the FX markets. Ben, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us once again.
An absolute pleasure, Natalie.
Okay, so looking back at that big data week, what for you was sort of the headline figure almost?
Oh, without doubt, the headline figure was cast in a low light, of course, was the GDP number or the national accounts. Now that gave us, it was certainly a political football, that's the first sort of point to make about it, and also I guess it does bring into account the idea of what monetary response there's going to be, because it was a complete disappointment. Now it missed on pretty much every metric in terms of the headline numbers. We're looking for a 0.7% increase, we've got a 0.3% increase in terms of wages, in terms of income. It was all bad and cast in a very, very gloomy light. So I guess what the response is going to be the most interesting part of it all, and I guess we're looking for Tony Abbott, the so-called construction Prime Minister. He's got to start constructing, basically.
Now, we did see a narrowing in that trade deficit. Would it be fair to say, though, that the slump in commodity prices hasn't really been factored into this number yet?
I would say not. I actually should call Tony Abbott the infrastructure Prime Minister, not the construction Prime Minister. Yes, no, probably not. I guess that all depends on your outlook across the commodity complex. We've seen a huge slump in the oil price, and right across the board in the commodity complex, it's been bad news. So iron ore is obviously a crucial component in terms of the terms of trade. So we'll be watching that. It's fallen out of bed this year. And pretty much everything else across that commodity space, it's all denominated in US dollars. So what that actually means is the higher the US dollar goes, the more the commodity slump is felt here in Australia, and the worse that's going to be reflected in those numbers. So interesting times ahead. They could get a lot worse, yes, in 2015, that's for sure.
Could we say then that the two-speed recovery in Australia is done, really?
Yes, but we're still looking for something to really pick up the slack from the mining boom, basically. Now, that could be construction. As I said, the infrastructure Prime Minister really needs to come to the party there. Retail spending, that was a little bit better than expectations, but again, the confidence in Australia, in the Australian economy, isn't really there. The Aussie dollar's falling, so that should be good for tourism. I mean, there's many sectors, but everything basically needs a bit of a lift.
Speaking of lifts then, how would you respond to the argument that Australia really is in need of further monetary stimulus, whether that comes from a weaker value in the Australian dollar or from a rate cut?
It probably needs both, and I think we're going to get both. I mean, interestingly, it was who's who in terms of the world of economists have seen the GDP numbers and have all revised their forecasts of rate rises now to rate cuts in 2015. So I probably agree with those forecasts, and I do think that the Aussie dollar is actually headed lower anyway. So it might be doing a little bit of the Reserve Bank's heavy lifting as well. So a lot to focus on, but our economy is it needs to really pick up some lost ground, that's for sure.
Ben, once again, thank you for all your comments today.
That's a pleasure, Natalie.
Many thanks to Ben there for his comments, and thank you viewers very much for watching. Do stay tuned, I've got plenty more exclusive interviews coming up for you, but for now, it's goodbye.